Yo, here we go. Season 2, episode 2 of the Weed for the People podcast. We got a real treat for you here. We got Thomas in the building from Raw Garden. You know, as we continue down this path, trying to make cannabis clean again, Thomas is a huge part of that. Of all the big brands, maybe everybody doesn't know this. I know he's a humble guy, but, you know, a lot of what we want to talk about today surrounds this. They're the only single source distillate company on scale that I could think of today in California. And what that means is they're farming what ends up in the cartridge. And therefore, they know exactly what they put on the plant. They're not guessing. They're not sourcing. And we'll get into it deeper, but this is an important part. And part of what we're trying to do here with this podcast is educate bud tenders and educate consumers. So, you know, I just want to welcome Thomas to the show. I guess it's a show, right? We'll call it my fucking show. Thanks for coming by and see if we just have a little conversation about what Raw Garden is, you know, what's going on with Cat 4 and anything else that, we want to jump into. So thanks for coming down here this morning.
Appreciate it, Elliot. And I appreciate the Catalyst team and all that they've done to lean into what they've found and what they've seen yourself, as far as the cleanliness of the shelves. And so if we could keep Raw Garden off our lips today, it'd be fucking awesome. Fuck Raw Garden. Fuck that sprout. It's really that sprout, and what we do is made up of a team of people that are, like what your shirt says, Patience before profits.
By the way, this was semi-intentional. I knew we were filming today. I'm like, which one should I grab? Don't put too much thought into my wardrobe, but I do think it's an important message, and I think it fits. I'm going to call it Raw Garden Nation and what they're all about. Let me just...
Hey, you're supposed to not say that
I'm not
fucking word.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
I'm going to name some names of our people today that they get all the credit for what we do and how we do it. It's kind of unusual how we do it and what we do, but it's about these people and the team. It's fucking unreal.
I like it. By the way, I forgot it. I'm going to turn my hat back the other way here. Normally I go back, but we want to put this message out there. Just tell me a little bit about your background, your entry into the industry, just to kind of get that part, out so the audience knows, how you got into the industry and, just kind of all the way up until today, more or less, your background and, how the whole thing started.
So I grew up in the Central Valley, San Joaquin Valley, Fresno, Kingsburg, Selma area. Kingsburg and Selma are known as the raisin capital of the world. Do you eat raisins?
Not
Your kids
much.
eat raisins?
Yeah.
They do?
Yeah, sometimes. Cool. Yeah, you're like, don't eat them.
So we farmed. My dad farmed for the Little Red Box with a lady on it, Sunmade. And so not only did we farm our own crop and dry it into raisins, but I grew up with him applying pesticides to other farmers' crops for the Sunmade brand. So I grew up around pesticides. That's what I grew up around. You could kind of tell, like, maybe this twitch or something over here a little bit,
So you think just being around it, and I've heard this before, not to jump in, but just being around it and farming it, you think, and applying it has, like, in small ways already affected your health from stuff you did when you were a kid?
I think I'm pretty fine.
I don't mean it terribly, but I'm just saying
it's just kind of a running joke.
I got it. Yeah.
I'm a little punk, so I think the punk that comes out of me just maybe is allowed for by some of those analytes.
Yeah.
So we grew up applying pesticides. We had good safety protocols because my dad, unknowing to the county at the time, and this is 20 years ago, so I'm not incriminating my dad or anything. He actually still works on the farms here, but we had good safety protocols. He had his son in and around Category 1 pesticides, the ones with the skull and crossbones on them kind of thing, Not all pesticides have that level of warning. So we had good safety protocols. Anyway, was pushed by his parents, my dad's parents, and my mom's parents, who are also farmers, to not be a farmer. You're not going to farm. Go to school, get the hell out of farming, because we were broke farmers. It was more about lifestyle. We grew up with this great lifestyle of broke farmer with time and a crop that you love, and you're just like, if it all is not perfect, you don't get anything. And so that intensity and that flow for a family is really great, but on small scale, it's really fucking scary. So don't be a farmer. So I went to college. I was like, okay, I like the farming. It's fun. I go with my dad, but they're small and they have no capital. So what do? I went and studied business. And
where at?
Santa Clara University.
Cool.
Upon graduating, how old are you?
46.
Oh, dang, I'm 42.
There you go.
Upon graduating, not going to be a farmer, decided to jump into the car business. It was a very toxic business, car business is. It's like ugly. Kevin Mans for 20 years had been a great used car salesman there, but also everybody's weed dealer. So he was sitting in front of me with a car deal, and what happened is I passed him back his car deal and said, Kevin, like the whole thing's fucked. Like I can't get this deal done, and I need to do something else. Like I got to do something else. And he pulled out his wallet and he's like, well, Bubba, you were a farmer, and you know I sell weed, so if you grow it, I'll sell it. So over the next 30, 90 days, I'm reading about Prop 215 and the history of that. And it was just like so inspiring because in 96, not Prop 215, but the original one in 96, it started with cannabis as medicine. And then it was very clear from what had been documented to fast forward 11 years at this point, it has value, efficacy in medicine. Like undoubtedly, people who are at life's end, and it brings them comfort. And so it was like, oh, it's real. Like really quickly, in a really like dire straits time financially for myself, for the businesses, for my family, I realized, oh my God, like fucking weed is wonderful. And look at this avenue. And so I remember I called my dad from the dealership and I said, oh, hey, this is like, things are not great. And I need to do something. And I realized, I said, you have a basement. I have a basement. I'm going to grow some weed. And so I'd spent the next 90 days then. And of course he supported that. And he's like retired farmer with a basement. And so we did our thing in the basement.
How many lights in each basement?
Oh, just like 2 in one and 1 in another.
But you were getting what, 4,000 a pound back then, 30.
Well, it was like, yeah, like Harborside became 90. Like I always joke, Harborside from 2009ish, 10ish, bought 99.9% of everything we grew to 2015.
Wow.
Yeah, or maybe like 13. And I say, oh, and then we smoked the rest. And so the other, tenth of a percent.
Yeah, go ahead.
But we went from 2 lights. We never got very big. And so fast forward from when we started in the basement to then when we ended up in the detached garage to then we ended up with a small warehouse in the Central Valley. Things are going smoothly with Harborside. My brother-in-law, another team member's name I will say today, Khalid Al-Nasser, was infatuated at a young age with hash. He really pushed me initially, like first harvest, making hash with it. So we've been making flowers and we've been making hash from our trim and then eventually BHO in bulk for Harborside. From literally the basement all the way through to today, our farming is clean green certified. And it was a program that Harborside supported and basically kind of spawned with Chris Van Hook, who runs Clean Green Certified.
Which anybody who's like in that era, and I went over this with Josh, there wasn't much testing and or people trying to put forward clean product and clean green certified or whatever at 2013, 14. So for the fact that they grabbed that bull by the horns and we're kind of moving along, considering as it is as far as time is concerned, that really is ahead of its era.
Yeah, it was ahead. Our first certification was in 2010, and we've kept it consistent through then.
What does clean green certified entail?
So essentially what Chris Van Hook did was he's an attorney doing USDA organic certifications for farms in California, and I think in maybe a few other states. So what he did was he just copied what he does for USDA organic farming. Go to a farm, go through the checklist. They report on everything that they do at that farm and how they do it. If they're not fucking liars, you get the truth. If it fits the USDA's program, then Chris Van Hook is the one who, basically does that process.
Which is really cool because I think that's unique for the time. And look, Harborside, I think there's different, opinions on, pros and cons. No doubt about it. They're pioneers. But, at that time, guys would maybe get one COA and then shop that around is like every batch was under that COA, but nobody was going out to the farms. Like I don't think that existed anywhere at the time.
And Harborside really, spawned that with Chris Van Hook. Chris Van Hook probably at the counter, like, hey, I do certifications. Like what, like what are we doing? And so I think Rick and Steve D'Angelo, Rick Frommer, Steve D'Angelo, some of those original people that are really like the heart and soul of what Harborside was at its origin. They said, heck yeah, Chris, like, let's do something. And so we can, for the farmers who go into that program, who make us flour and bulk concentrates, we can say this one is clean green. And they did a really, really huge service to the patient then. They said, we will pay you $100 more for each pound that you grow if it's clean green certified.
We're coming all the way back full circle. I think that's where it's going, yeah.
Yeah, so Harborside leaned in and paid more for things that they knew were grown properly. That inspector would come out, do the soil samples, shoot the shit, go over your application, which you filled out every year for changes, and which pressed you, by the way. And it's unfortunate we're not going to say the brands, the brand.
It's a free speech.
So I just don't like
I don't
the thing.
tell anybody's speech.
What,
I generally try not to, but free speech, man. Throw them around.
No. I was just saying the Raw Garden. I was trying not to say that.
Oh,
shit.
your brand.
No, I'm not saying anybody else's brand except for the ones that I've seen as clean and good operators. I'm willing to say those.
Right.
Can we say them?
Say them all.
Fucking Friendly Farms is doing a good job procuring. Classics is doing a wonderful job procuring. And then we'll stop there and keep talking about this story because we'll bring that back up because there's some super good operators.
No, I want to get to all that.
The operators, there's operators and brands in California that like vapes were always great. Right. Inspectors visiting me in like 2012 for our annual review. So he says, "Is there anything that like Clean Green can do for you?" And I'm like, "Well, you could like spread the word a little bit better about what you guys are and like what it means because this is like a pain in the butt every year, and I love seeing you, Mr. Truman." Our inspector every year was Truman forever, and he's an awesome guy. And he says, "What can we do for you?" More marketing. And Truman, we just bought some closed loop extraction equipment, and I need to fill it like regularly. So if you know any really good clean green farmers that you can link me with, please. And he's like, "Oh, I probably shouldn't say anything, but I'm going to this farmer, and he's the most amazing farmer, and he farms like so much citrus." And he tells me all about the citrus guy. And I'm like, "And you're going there next?" And he's like, "Yeah." I said, "Well, can you tell him that we bought this equipment and I really need to fucking fill it? And I would really just like to make concentrates that are clean green certed." He's like, "We don't certify extraction." And I was like, "I know, but we'll get there." Anyway, citrus guy turns out to be good people. So he's one of the founders of Raw Garden. We didn't come together immediately other than like, holy shit, this guy in 2000 and mid 2000s is like, he converted an acre of his greenhouse into growing sun-grown flower. He's like at that time, like the guys have acres now, but it was not a lot of acres, maybe a few up the hill, but that was a pretty rare thing to see back then, hence the pricing. Yeah, and I didn't even get to see it because he wasn't like going to trust me, but I'm like, whoa, he has containers frozen of like really high grade, great looking stuff. So we had now finally a supply of like something we could say clean green grown and enough supply of other than our own clean green extracted. What happened though was Fresno County figured out like a bunch of the other counties in California that they could civilly fine you out of business. They at the time there were good protections in 2012,
yeah, post-Obama. When did the Obama doctrine? That was
08, and everybody was like, and then it was kind of like they were picking them off.
Yeah.
So Fresno County then copied and said, okay, if we find you, for every plant that you have, after an abatement period, of course, for every plant that you have, it's $1,000 per plant per day. So Citrus Farmer said, "Oh, I just cut everything down and we will not plant again." Because he has a great citrus business, and it's not cuties.
Right.
Not cuties. Yeah. Much smaller farmer, it turns out, than cuties than the fucking rumor, but not cuties. And he cuts everything down, and he's like, "Greenhouse is going back that part of the greenhouse is going back to breeding because he's a breeder. He breeds his own citrus trees. And it was just a wealth of like, because I just grew up around pesticides and following the rules with grapes. I never got into the science side. We had nematodes in the soil, so I got to visit some labs with my dad, who
explain
monitor.
I don't even know. So explain what
nematodes
nematodes
are.
are.
Pest.
Yeah,
It's
gotcha.
a microscopic plant pest.
Got it.
It's a dirty thing in California because it causes a dirty thing. Just pesticide applications, conventional, that knock down that pest, which are gnarly because it's a soil-borne pest. So all of that's just getting drenched into the
I'm going to get to that later about farming and regions and different stuff like that.
We get chased out of Fresno is the long and short of it, because now that large grower shuts it off, and I'm like, oh wow, the writing's on the wall. Legalization just barely didn't pass in California because Harborside spoke up, and when they did that was like Prop 19 in 2012 or whenever it was.
Yeah.
It failed.
It went down a few times. Yeah.
And I was nervous as hell because I was like, oh shit, we're not ready. And then it said in that basically what we have now, which is cities and counties can opt in or out. And I was like, oh fuck, sure as shit, Fresno's fucking out, so I got to get out of here. Got lucky and introduced in 2014 to a great organic farmer, Chris Cadwell of Tutti Frutti Farms out of Santa Barbara County. Went immediately to Chris and told him my story of where we were at and the citrus farmer and the mess we were in, because we should just get the fuck out of this area. And Chris was like, yeah, like I've been growing weed here since the 90s. And he was just a really giving person. And so he let me build and dream up the idea of getting us moved as quickly as possible to one of his main farms in Santa Barbara. I'm a small farmer, and we got very fortunate in 2015 to get in front of a board of supervisors and commissioners at the county level who were just like farmers. And they listened really well when we impressed upon them that scale was going to come for this industry eventually. It needs to be in some responsible farmers' hands, and don't limit a property owner who has farmable land from deciding how much broccoli they want to grow, or cabbage, or whatever. And we got very fortunate that a few of those board members were like, yeah, we don't want to limit another farmer. And so the county was like, well, the city looks like they're going to kind of play ball, so we'll let the farmers farm. And so kind of fast forward then to 2017, we'd been farming on 2 farms in Santa Barbara, working with the county supervisors to not like limit us. If it were to scale one day, do not say I can't use my property from lot line to lot line. We didn't think we would be able to. We didn't think that they were going to make, the state's moving through writing its deal right at the time. And then the one thing slipped in it where it was like, oh, you can put a bunch of licenses together. And we were like, oh crap, the county just said. And so we have this space. And in 2017,
just to clarify, in case folks don't know that are watching, so there was a promise in Prop 64 that you could only have up to 1 acre. So a lot of the jurisdictions just kept it at 1 acre, and then through some lobbying efforts, and there's different debates how it got there, and that was considered a tier 1 license, which was 44,000 square feet, basically an acre. The tier 2, they said you could have unlimited. So anybody who has a substantial amount of canopy is, for lack of a better word, stacking 10,000 square foot licenses. And then, by Santa Barbara basically saying, hey, it's unlimited, and or like if you have an existing greenhouse, a lot of the flower places where they made flowers got converted over. That really became the epicenter of where you could have large canopy.
And I do not know who lobbied that at the state level, and I don't
There's
know
different
why.
rumors.
I don't know why it happened.
Yeah.
But we had placed ourselves in a zone where we all of a sudden realized, oh, like they can't stop us from doing more. In 2017, we grew about 20 acres, and we decided we're fucking freezing it all because we're only in 30 shops, and the bud tenders they need access to the highest grade that they can get for not fucking $100. And it was like, we'll have enough that we can go to a lot of the stores and like treat the bud tender. We had a lot of fun treating the bud tender at Harborside because they wouldn't buy $60 fucking eighths. And if you grew $60 eighths and give it to the bud tenders, like those are the people who truly appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys were really the first one on scale that brought concentrates to a price point that I think forever changed the game. Because to your point, they were always, coming in at a much higher number, and now, I think a lot of people have followed suit. But in that regard, as far as the pricing and the scale which you're able to produce concentrates, I don't think, if you go back to, whatever, 15, 16, 17, I don't think there's anybody that was even close to that at the time.
No, and so we just kind of got a bad rap, but literally we're just like trying to get it to the point where bud tenders could access it, because those are like the most critical patients. And so the whole point was like get live resin into people's dabbers, that's what the dab rig should have. And so it was about that. We got a kind of a bad rap, and then so basically you fast forward to now, and we're driven by this ethos of like responsible production. And there's this lab game catching anything that's like irresponsible. What the fuck happened? Like we had our head in the sand, like everybody's doing good shit for the plant. Like, the legacy of all legacy folks, respect the plant and all this stuff. And it's like, whoa, like I know there's still lots of legacy out there. Doesn't look very respectful at this point. Just got surprised by that.
Right.
And so
I do think there's this, and this is, look, we all stand on the shoulders of legacy, but I do think there's this, whatever you want to call it, rose-colored glasses when you look back that, somehow this was like an era of no greed and clean product and whatever, right? It's not necessarily the case. There was, of course, people in there as there is today, but legacy doesn't necessarily mean choir boy, right? And
I'm sure it's much cleaner today than it was back then.
Oh yeah,
like
I mean, ask any of the labs, yeah, it's. I mean, I spoke with Josh last week, and he was doing testing in 14, 15, all the way through 18. It was just atrocious, the stuff, the majority of people were using. The thing that's interesting to me, my awakening really kind of started with the LA Times article, was kind of the first step. And then, as I went further and further along, talked to more and more people, Thomas being one of those great resources, really hadn't thought too deeply about the farming, what's going into it, what pesticides are people using, all that. I just figured like, these DCC hasn't handled, the labs are all straight up. I didn't even know about this off panel thing. I do find it.
Wait. So you started in weed when? Like what year?
Well, I mean, I used to fuck around in the 90s a little bit, right? So the first time I could vote was Prop 15, and we had, 3-lighter in the basement, that kind of thing. And we sold packs out of BC and stuff, but really didn't get back into it. Was in real estate from like 04 to 13. And I started creeping back in 13. Then we started growing quite a bit. I wasn't personally cultivating it, but just kind of working on the business side. 13, 14, 15, we had gotten pretty, big on the cultivation side. And then by 26, up in Calaveras, a county I won't name, I don't know if the statue on that's gone. And then
you guys led the way for Fresno that got us chased to Santa. So you know the story. Okay, that's my point. Like, you were ignorant though recently. I was ignorant.
I was super ignorant. Like you know what you know when you know it. And again, we did have some indoor grows. It started with indoor grows down here in Compton in LA, and I didn't ever really ask what was put on it. I know we bug bomb rooms when they were done, and not again something that I'm proud of, but it happened, and I think it's important that we have these honest conversations. But as I've learned more, like that shit sticks in the drywall, and then on the next run, it could end up in the plants, right? So there's all stuff that like we didn't know, but as far as like really being involved, around 13, so just enough, I'm not, OG legacy, but just enough to kind of see that 3 years of, the Wild West, and even the early development, from 16 through 18 before metric even became, a thing.
So I told a fib recently, and I was just guessing. I was like, I think Elliot like got in 2020, and then.
Well,
because when we started talking, I was like, Elliot, who's blowing smoke up your ass? Remember I used to ask you like 3 months ago? I was like, wait, who told you that about that side of the chemistry? That's fucking bullshit. Well, and I was like, wait, Elliot, only 2020, maybe that's why.
Well, so to just put so Catalyst is 2020, right?
Yeah.
So we did all the growing up until then, and then Connected, shout out to them, been a good partner. They originally ran our store. So our first 4 stores were Connected branded, but we always owned those stores, and then we ended up each kind of doing our own thing, super friendly. I won't tell a long story here, but so then take our Belmont Shore, our Bellflower, our Cherry location, our Santa Ynez, those all started off as Connected stores, and then eventually when we switched off and we launched Catalyst, which was at our 5th store, we rebranded those and became Catalyst in 2020. But there's some history that predates that. But as a brand, we're only 4 years old. That said,
Wait.
they're-
So hold on. Can I ask you a
yeah,
question?
ask me anything.
So family. You have 2 kids?
4.
4.
Yeah.
And the ages?
They always change. So let me see if I can get this right. No, 15, 13, 12, and 8.
Okay. So they lived through all of your
Oh yeah.
involvement with weed.
No, I got little. They're even to the builds. I have some like old school pictures of them standing in front of grows and shit. Yeah, and even in fact, my the funny one was before it was really that legal. I think it was my daughter, maybe it was one of my sons. You know, they ask what your dad does. So this was like I was transitioning out of real estate because we were doing foreclosures. It was slowing down, so the timing was kind of good. And my kid grows little trees. So then like every time I went and saw, because I just used to call
little trees.
Well, I used to just call them little trees, right? Because like they were kids.
Wasn't it way scarier back then? Just everything.
A little
because,
bit.
Like they were going in and taking people's families from them if they were around it. Like it's way better now.
Well, 2013 was pretty late. Like the Obama doctrine had kind of come. Like you probably weren't going to go to jail. We had the burner phones and the whole things. And then, we had like 50 hoop houses without getting too deep into how some of that stuff went down. Like you're selling a lot of weed at one time, right? So then, that part I think sometimes was, more of the like, well, how's that going to, work out? And we went through it all, fronting different stuff. And then we just got to like, all right, fuck you, COD. I'd rather get less than like hope everything works out on, your end. But, I was never overly scared about the kid thing. Again, I think that, 2013, it was a little Wild West, but it definitely was a lot different from like 07 and before, right? Like you kind of knew.
No, I felt like we're not legacy at all. Like,
yeah, that's why. Yeah.
I'm like, we had so much, like, it was good. Like, it wasn't that.
That's always, I say as far as legacy, and some people will think it, I don't know why, and I'm like, bro, I'm really a poser as far as legacy. I got a little bit of the, thing in me, and like I said, I fucked around in school, whatever, break out pounds, sell them in QPs and shit, and like I said, we had a 3-lighter. We were pretty bad at growing. In fact, Caleb told the story of our YOLO grow. At the Capo event, he said it was like I was like working on a contest for mites. To be fair, I wasn't the master grower in the whole thing, but Connected ended up. That's how we kind of got linked up with him. Taking over that grow. But it's interesting to me that the guys that were farmers, and I actually think this is a common thread, have stayed on this path of really caring about the patients. It's a little bit of a generalization. And then I think there's other folks, like everybody likes to make money. But, and again, what the shirt means and why I really like it, and shout out to Beard Bros for putting it out, patience over profits. It doesn't mean you don't make money. Like we're all fucking like, let's go make some fucking money. But at the end of the day, like always keep your eye on the patient. And I think if we do that as an industry, it's only going to lead to positive outcomes. And honestly, that is the first and foremost is consumer health and safety. But I also think if you're playing the long game, that's the winning, strategy. And I hate to say that like consumer safety is a strategy, because at the end of the day, it's its own good and its own self. And I think we are heading to an alternative future, which is way less bad. That said, like, I think the guys that have played long term and then just come in to get a lick and not give a fuck and dunk plants and Eagle 420 the fuck out of them, like they're not going to last, right?
No, the most definitely not. It's all about what standard gets set. And so for this plant and THC, it needs to be a lot higher standard than raisins were, for instance. But I'm used to, as a farmer, not making money, so I can weather this this long storm that we're in. Got a lucky period to make a little money, but I'm used to not making money, generally. But when you delivered raisins, there is a standard, right? And so you showed up with your crop in truck after truck, and they take a sample right there on the scales before it goes into the processing facility and gets sold, and they give you a grade. And pretty much all of farming works that way. Only the highest grade gets paid the most. And so I grew up with farming to the highest standard that was set, so that when we showed up at the scales and when we got paid in a few years, it was on the highest grade we could score. And sure as fuck, you didn't want it to fail. And raisins is easier, a lot easier than cannabis, because cannabis now has this much higher standard. And so everything will shift to the farmer needing to be setting that highest standard. And I thought it was already there, but like,
No, it's happening live now. In fact, I just bought a bunch of biomass at 35, a pound, and I reverse negotiated against myself just because I wanted to have it, and it ended up there was a larger purchase because they didn't run small batches, and we just wanted to have some oil on deck, but from producers, and I'm talking to them all day, to brands, to because there's 4 or so large producers, then a bunch of mid-sized producers, and the labs that are getting, asked. The price is bifurcating like live as we're doing this, right? People are like, oh, because before, I've coined it category 4. We'll get into this echo. That's my next question, versus category 3. Already category 4 is demanding a higher price because it's a higher standard, right? And right now that standard is an Enresco or an Infinite test. I know there's other labs, so I really like and respect that are catching up and adding these, other pesticides and acolytes. Did I say that right?
I'm not a scientist either. I'm just a dumb farmer.
I thought you were. I don't know.
Dumb farmer.
You've dropped a bunch of fucking knowledge on me. I'll say that. So, I think that's literally happening right now, and I've been more optimistic, just even from last week to where it's headed. Just even us marking it category 4 versus category 3.
Well, wait, though. How do I get the blue dot? Because we're not testing every batch.
Yeah,
we're not right now. Like we only screen, we farm all our own stuff, so we know what fucking got sprayed, and we don't.
At this point, I think each batch is going to have to be run through an Enresco or an Infinite, and then I do think there'll be a slimmed down version of what's actually being used. So this kind of leads me into the next thing, which I think is really cool to talk about, just so, folks that are like, well, where the fuck is this going? Who's going to resolve, how we're getting there? So it's been cool, got invited to a little group that we're putting together. It's called ECHO. It's not done. ECCO. What does that stand for again?
I don't remember.
I don't know either. Clean shit, we'll just say. But, so it involves manufacturing.
You know what? Let me pause. Like ECHO, if it happens, is actually... So clean green certification can have all kinds of cheating because the farmer could just fucking cheat and do something stupid, or doing something they didn't know they were doing wrong even. But clean green would miss some of that if the farmer wasn't didn't know what they were doing or just lied. So ECHO, though, the difference is ECHO catches what's actually on the shelf and says, oh, we see. We look at everything. And so really that's where the scan needs to happen and the certification needs to happen 100%. Is right there at the end product, not with the farmer.
Yeah, the shelf is the only truth because it got to the shelf, and until you get to the shelf, there's a lot of ways to maneuver and do different stuff, and there's no way to really know. And I mean, as far as a third party, the farmer knows what he put on there, but there's no way to really know as a third party. And look, human nature is human nature unless you're shelf testing. So we got this little posse together. We're going to make it, into a nonprofit. I've whatever you want to call it, jumped the gun just because I think the consumer safety is critical. And, Thomas has some data sets. Josh has some data sets. We have some of our own. And Josh's data set is ridiculously large, and he said 24%, or it's not just pymetrozine. I want to be clear about that. It's a bunch of other issues, but that's the big one that people are using today, which is Endeavor, which is made up about of half pymetrozine. The scientific name is that. So it's in 24% of samples, and in 18% of samples, it's testing in parts per million, which means application and people are putting it on. So the short-term fix for me is like, hey, let's sticker this. At least give people informed consent. I'm not happy about the distillate shelf having 24% pymetrozine. I believe Josh's data. So the quicker that we could at least give consumers informed consent and let them say, hey, Cat 4 is important to me, and I think it will be. Just anecdotally having spoken to people, and I know it's super important to the bud tenders. They are generally the salt of the earth kind of people and want to sell, clean medicine. So we've been looking at it, and I don't want to bore the viewers too much, but there's 66 chemicals on the DCC panel. To Josh's credit, he tests 380 something, and he's working on 600. But you need that in order to screen for how people are beating the 66, and this is going to be an infinite game. So I think there's a movement to get it to about, I don't know, I heard it was going to be 81. Now it's getting up to 94, but there's going to be some movement so the other labs could develop the test as well. They'll screen for 81, 94 chemicals, because what happens in a 380 thing screening, and Thomas has probably seen more tests than me, but I've seen a lot and I got a lot of secondhand knowledge. Most of the stuff in that 380 panel is non-detect, so it's not being used. However, without that test, it could be used next year. I do think such a big spotlight has been put on Endeavor that, you know, the following season it won't be used, but it takes a while to get through the system, and I'm not going to wait that long. So we're going to mark this Category 4, Category 3. I think the Category 3 guys are going to get crushed. And I think every brand knows it. So, you know, we'd hope that everybody's jumping in.
I'm sure that, like, there's a major shift happening.
It's happening
like,
now.
It's got to.
Yeah.
So, like, you did it. Vapes will be great again, like, very soon.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, and look, I think it takes everybody.
Well, there's not been a lot of people willing to speak up that have been willing to actually look at the truth, which is, like, amazing to have a store group that's actually willing to say something, because other groups have screened their shelves and they've seen what you've seen and they are just lying in silence. So the patient aspect of all of this, though, kind of like rubs me really raw to see so little,
even like
so many.
The lack
not
of
willing to
urgency.
just say something.
Look, and I'm more than willing to say, like, look, I was, you know, late to the party. It was a blind spot. You know, my biggest regret is losing touch with the farming community when it came to the distillate. Like, I still talk to the farmers on flower, and then, you know, you're single source, so you're kind of the exception. And just dealing with the brands only, like, I want to know where it came from, and, you know, again, whatever you want to call it, the enlightening, and then really just, you know, having that moment where it was like, what the fuck? I'm not selling poison anymore. And then going down this path, like, I didn't know when I did the first test, there was even other chemicals on the panel. And those tests are fucking bullshit. Do this, do that. And I was like, okay. But, you know, it was important enough to me that, like, people that are way smarter than me, Thomas is, don't believe the dumb farmer fucking shit. Shut up,
You
Thomas.
gotta believe it. look at my eyes.
Super humble guy, but you know, he's been a good resource. You know, we've had some lively discussions on a few issues, but you know, definitely you know, all for the greater cause. You know, and again, the labs as well. You know, all labs, and just, you know, getting that information. You know, I don't know, it's probably hundreds of hours, and now, you know, usually try to do it at the end of the day. You know, we're also running this other thing, but at the end of the day, I think everybody's moving there. And it's super important just to keep tracking these chemicals. And the DCC, they don't know. They're not even going to be caught up. In fact, I'll probably email them both these podcasts and I'm not even being sarcastic, just to, you know, help them, you know, get caught up. But the echo will be, so I just can't wait. So hopefully by October, the stickers are rolled out. If you got it, you got it. If you don't, you don't. I think the scoreboard is going to dictate everybody to go on.
But what the bud tender absolutely needs to know is they can reach out to their brand, and their brand at this point, whoever they like, knows where they stand regarding this, because many of them have seen it themselves. And I've been scared to death. Most of my time with farming cannabis as opposed to raisins is like what we don't know about what we're doing and what are we going to find out fucking next.
Well,
so like metals testing, holy shit. Like, do we have a fucking clean process? I must have like blown my family at home's mind through those periods, because I was so stressed to finally get Enresco and finally get the lab operators testing our products ahead of when that dropped on us in like 2018. And so I've always lived in fear of the unknown and what we're gonna know. And so that part of, you know, doing this crop, that's been the most anxiety filled part of this. And so seeing the operators, and there's some like really good operators out there, some really good farmers. It's interesting because Classics is a vape that ended up in the sampling, and like I looked at their oils and I was like, oh, holy shit, like they like look primo, but not perfect. Nobody's perfect. Like ag regions all over the state.
Well, that was actually
like, it's not easy to farm clean weed.
Well, that was going to be my next question. So.
But my point is I learned that then Classics sources out of Santa Barbara, and they source with a garden right down the street from us. And I was like, oh shit, that's why their oil looks like really similar to us. People are doing, farmers are doing good work. Like, they're doing good work everywhere.
Yeah, and this is all kind of stuff I learned fairly recently. Maybe knew it kind of in the back of my head, but again, I put a big difference between, whoops, I accidentally got overdrift, let me resolve for it, and I'm applying it. Like, one is intent, one is dangerous, but, you know, it could be dealt with. If you're doing it intentionally, you're just a scumbag, you're poisoning people the end, right? Any farmer that, you know, does it intentionally, and look, people make bad decisions maybe when their
farming's tough.
Yeah, their money's
like,
not
you gotta,
right.
Like crop, it's like it's dying, it's getting attacked. The
so
bugs.
I wanted to ask you about farming in Santa Barbara. Oh, let's wrap the echo thing. So I mean, as far as, and I don't think either one of us is total experts, but I mean, what's your take on the echo? I mean, I think it ultimately happens. I think the labs are moving and adding these chemicals to the test as like people are trying to get Cat 4 certified, and they might prefer somebody else's customer service to another guy's customer service or whatever. So I think we get to 90 or no 81-ish for sure, maybe a little bit more. I mean, what's your take on that? And then just, I like the idea of renewing it every 6 months, every year, and having this very wide breadth. And why I think Josh is such a critical part of this movement is he, I think, will always be the leading force. So he's going to get his panel up to like 600 and something.
Which is scary for all farmers because it's the unknowns, right?
But like, if we can't test for it, then we don't know that it's in it. Then if it's in it, we could try to prevent it. And I said this many times, what I'd like to see is labs, instead of working to pass it, working out to resolve the root problem, right? And look, nobody wants to fail a batch. In fact, we just, we're running some, indoor trim, and there's like one thing on the Cat 4 thing that's a little bit over, and everybody's like, oh, but it's just a little bit over. I'm like, bro, this is like being married. We're married to Cat 4. You don't get to choose when you're Cat 4 and you're not Cat 4, right? We're monogamous to Cat 4. That's it. That's all we're doing. And it's like, bro, we got to get rid of it. And you've talked about destroying product, but I want to get into farming in Santa Barbara, because those, and I think this is interesting, and a lot of people maybe don't know the nuances of this, and I barely do, but I'm doing the best I can to soak it all up like a sponge. But those used to be flowers, which have different they're not being eaten.
Cut flowers for giving your wife flowers. Flowers.
Flowers. Yeah. Thanks for clarifying. Yeah. The actual flowers, not the weed flower. And so what ended up happening is, if it was an existing greenhouse, kind of a tricky way to write the law, but it was what it was, and those were mostly cut flowers, you could then farm within that greenhouse. But those flowers were blasted with some of the worst shit, like worse than our food, worse than anything. I know the Central Valley, because of all the 30 years of chemicals, super hard area to
sun-made growers blasting.
To farm. Santa Barbara is a super hard area to farm, from what I understand. So I just want people to appreciate and understand, and I want you to walk them through the process, what you have to do. And this is like, you're not going to apply it. Okay, check, easy, right? I'm not a scumbag. But you got to prevent against overdrift. You got soils issues. You got all sorts of stuff that you have to deal with. So how did you get your farm to a point where basically you were able to cock block out all the other chemicals and put patience over profits? Because, we've had conversations offline where you've destroyed 6 figures worth of biomass. Not a lot of people would do that. It was a very small batch that we had to let go yesterday. And even that, you're like, ugh. But at the end of the day, like, what went into retrofitting, I guess you'd call it, the grow area, and then how do you maintain it, and then, destroying product, just the amount of, money, not just money, but effort and sincere regard for the customer have you put in to your grow up there to make sure that, you're staying clean, green, certified, Cat 4 certified, Echo, whatever you want to call it, up there at
so we are definitely not perfect. It's growing clean cannabis outside's tough. When you talk about the greenhouse issue in Santa Barbara, that's a separate issue than what we deal with in the north part of the county. We grow under hoops only, so it's more free air, like less control than those greenhouses. That's a different group.
We used to hoop it up, man.
We learned some tough lessons in those greenhouses in like 2016 when pesticide testing was really starting to come online, where we were like, from some big brands today that were already producing out of those greenhouses, that we realized, oh, holy shit, like this is dirty. And those are great brands still today that then went in and immediately cleaned the fuck up what they were doing, which was good to see. But that was probably that was our first like $100+ $1,000 scratch of what was in the containers, came from some carp greenhouses. Anyway, what our issue is and why we're not perfect is because we have to farm in and amongst all the other farmers in the region. And food has different standards than weed. Food can use conventional pesticides. So the battle is, how much of Santa Barbara and North County can we turn to organic farming? Not just weed farming, but grape farming, because the region is notorious for wineries and grape growing for wine. How can we, and then it's notorious for great vegetables and great berries. So how can we get our neighbors and kind of push out and make sure that what's in our general vicinity is done organically? So that's cost us a lot of money. We've leased land next to us and adjacent to us, and just like, so we could turn it in. And we've actually turned in total time, I think, and maybe don't like this, not a fact, but around 50 to 100 acres turned into organic land, because we literally went in and said, we do not want you growing those veggies next to us, please, and we will lease this at a higher rate so that you can like.
I love it.
So then we just like fallowed it and grew some hay and the thing, and now it's organic.
Yeah.
So that's been like a huge part of our responsibility. It's not easy. I just spent time.
I don't think there's anybody else doing that, by the way. You're leasing
There is.
out.
No, all the good, responsible Santa Barbara weed growers know, and they are just pushing out and seeing through their product as responsible. And the difference in Santa Barbara County is, though, our ag commissioner, who should have extreme oversight into the applications of pesticides, because you are required to report every 30 days what you've applied on any crop to the county of Santa Barbara. Every county in the state is required of the farmer to do that. And our ag commissioner here happens to be super dialed into what's getting reported for cannabis. So the whole entire region of Santa Barbara for weed growers is under an awesome microscope. The ag commissioner is watching and is reviewing what's going on. So you have a really awesome region of farming. Los Alamos Gardens, I think, is who does classics. Like, they're fighting the good fight like us. Like, fuck, what are you guys spraying? When are you spraying it? And stay the fuck away from near our crops. And so they're ending up with good results. Yeah. And so this county,
drift is hard to do that, right?
No, that's why I'm saying they're like pushing back. Hey, start. And so it's like, can't you just like switch to organic?
Right.
It's been hard because there's not a lot of money in organics.
A lot of people don't realize, I just want to make this clear too, is so the application of Endeavor, so I hear from smart people, is
the
a
branded
fucking,
pesticide.
the pesticide
Endeavor.
pymetrozine, which is showing up, is a felony. So just because it doesn't show up on the DCC panel right now, the farmer who's applying it is engaging in felony conduct, right? And that's,
So here's the problem in cannabis farming. There's very little you can spray on the crop, like very little. And it's a good thing for the patients, because this is the cleanest crop known to mankind in all of mankind's history of farming. The EPA controls labels for pesticides. If you make a pesticide as a corporation, you get it approved for certain crops. And there's not a lot of labels that are approved to spray on cannabis. And so what we're required to do is anything that we would ever want to use, even when we're making seeds, for instance, if we want to apply sulfur, which is a great element that's used in farming as a fungicide, it's an excellent thing. And it's an organic product, wettable sulfur, by our ag commissioner's reading of that EPA-controlled label, does not specify enough for use on cannabis. So we do not use sulfur in any of our farming now. Like, we have been cut off from wettable sulfur. And so Santa Barbara as a region compared to others is, if you're looking for product like that's grown somewhere, like what region should you, like Santa Barbara right now, because the ag commissioner is very strict. And then watches. When we say, hey, here's our report for the last 30 days, and it's through a government system, you can go and see what raw garden has sprayed for the last 3 or 4 years if you wish, because we log it with our ag commissioner. And so that's all I'll say about Santa Barbara region. It's fucking, I mean, I know we don't like,
that's good.
I know we're not crazy about government, and the government does this thing.
No,
but
well, look, I think
holy
with,
shit,
I think
like
with
when
this,
the government does their job around safety and like following minimal process, which is fucking follow the labels.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to see on
great
on the big things, like, I think their mandate was health and safety of the consumer, and like, they kind of dropped the ball. So like, that I think is where they should, lean in. Actually, now that I'm on it, I want to ask you a question on something, because there's a lot of debates about this. People that I know that are way smarter than me, a little bit off the wall, but it just made me think of it. The aspergillus. What do you think about the testing done on that and some of the recalls done on that? I know the guys in Oregon were freaked the fuck out. I actually got a text message from a guy today that I love and respect, that's on a little bit of a warpath with that being a bullshit test. I know the farmers are kind of lining up around it. I personally don't have a strong opinion because I don't know enough. But what's your take on the, because there was a few recalls on aspergillus. I just feel for those brands, because it's like
too all over the place, number one. And it literally is all over the place as far as aspergillus, right? So like, I don't expect, because we have the Kevin Kroger, our quality director, who you met one time.
Right.
Like top notch. And so all of our pre-rolls, like I was going to use the D word. What's a better word for douching?
Douche is good.
We douche like our facilities, right? And so I think we've only had one hit for aspergillus, but the whole time I'm like, well, that was just fucking random, because we sent it back in like 5 different times to two or three labs, or maybe just one lab, I don't know. And it was like, we could never get it to test negative again. And so that one's like a freak show for the brands, because it's not right. And what the real problem with it though is what it forces is the use of fungicides that maybe don't really need to be used. Like, so I'd rather, if I'm smoking, I'm looking through my buds for visible, like, is there some shit growing? Is it like, because we grow in hoops. So it's like when I smoke our own product, which is the mids I was calling out, which I should probably load another bowl. When I'm cracking those open, I'm not thinking about aspergillus like at all. I'd be more worried about fungicides. So I think someone did on LinkedIn, like, would you rather smoke aspergillus? And it was a poll, and I was like, or pesticides or whatever. And I was like, aspergillus? Fuck, holy shit, all day.
That's it. And I think there's a consensus out there that, and again, it maybe is more dangerous for people with compromised immune systems. And, it's always a risk reward, right? Like at some point, you got to use something, right, on the crop,
just rather not people like fighting that one,
right,
like with chemicals, like don't fight that with chemicals.
Exactly. Let's roll into the LA Times story. Whatever that is, what is that, 6, 7, 8 weeks now? What's your take on it? If you could say, were you a source? What do you think?
No, it was a time of ignorance is bliss, man.
Right.
You were ignorant.
I was ignorant as fuck, yeah.
And so I just had learned of this issue like in January, February. And our quality director, Kevin, he came to Raw Garden with a big quality background. He's an analytical guy, and already knew of iCal and the work that they were doing. And so I remember this fear of the unknown always, right? And all of a sudden, Kevin is on the team at Raw Garden. And I think it was the first meeting. He told me about iCal, and he's like, oh, they look deeper. And I'm like, oh, yes, look deeper. So at that point, we started using iCal 3-4 years ago. And I didn't ever form a relationship with Josh. Like, Kevin would mention Josh as this staunch advocate for accuracy and for knowing what the fuck is there. And I'm always like, oh shit, Josh, like he's into the unknowns, like holy fuck, like he'll get after it. And so I was like, well, Kevin, like we got to support iCal because that's like doing God's work. And another lab in the industry, I won't even name them, they told me, because I called them when I heard about this, and before the LA Times article came out. No, we're not a source. Did they call us? Yeah. Did they test our product? Did it freak me out? Fuck yeah. I'm like, oh shit, the expanded panel that Enresco's got together, all this. Anyway, I was talking to another lab when I figured out about it. Thank you. And they're a really responsible lab, and they kind of knew what was going on too. And I'm like, whoa, what? Like, hey, can we talk about this more? Or why aren't you doing something about it? And they said, well, Josh is doing God's work, and we're not like going to stand up and do that type of work, you know.
Well, he's down to one flower brand.
Nobody like.
I heard
his COA work like over the years has just dropped to nothing.
Yeah,
like he doesn't do a lot of COAs because he's a brand that will fail. He'll fail you. He doesn't care.
He does not
fail.
Care. That's my read on it. And I was a little bit of a skeptic at first, I'll be honest. But I'm a big believer. When people say the science, or they are the science, I've heard that in other areas before. You always got to be, I don't know, right? And so getting the opinion of, Thomas or Zach from Enresco, or
that's why you got to have a couple.
Yeah,
like a couple of like.
Yeah, you get everybody, you bring them all kind of in here.
iCal.
Yeah, exactly. And look, Alex been a good resource. Nate from Bel Costa, just getting all the different opinions and then trying to extrapolate from the opinions, what it is, and then taking back, like half the time me and you have done it, but where I take it, hey, somebody said this to me, I'm not smart enough, to counter argument. If you want to, get deep into different cannabis abuse policy, let's fucking go or whatever. But on the testing stuff, I know I have my limits, but then I'll take that argument from that guy,
so I've been scared,
and I'll go back to this guy, and I'm
scared to death of iCal since we started testing with him, like 4 years ago. and it's like scary, right?
But at the end of the day, you want to know the truth.
I want to see.
Right,
Like we must see, and so
that's why I think he's the truth. So that's my
transparency is key for the patient.
Right.
Like transparency is key. And so I don't know if you know this, but we made a stupid gnarly commitment long ago when we had to have COAs and we realized like, oh, the law is to have the COA. The store gets a copy of the COA, but how the fuck do I see the COA if I wanted to see it? Well, in order to see the COA for most brands in California today, you got to go in and ask the bud tender, hey, can I get the COA? So what we committed to long ago, and it's been uncomfortable because we're not perfect. We don't spray anything that you shouldn't fucking be spraying, but it's battling back the conventional farmer from drift, right? But we decided, you know what? We're being held to such a high standard. This is phenomenal. And we care because we all use it every day, what we make. Like when I finish a crop, I fucking smoke the crop. Always smoke the crop. My dad smokes the crop. He dabs the crop. He dabs out of a dry rig. You know, he dabs out of a dry rig. He's like infamous in the company because of his dry dabbing. He's like, when, you know, he'll joke like, when I die, like cut me open. These are like raw garden lumps. He's like, because he dry dabs the shit out of everything we can make. But then the next thing is, if you can get to the COA, can you get to the full COA?
Right.
That actually has the details.
Well, so here's the weird thing.
So you can get to our details.
Nice.
And we're going to keep the transparency.
I love it because here's the weird thing that I learned just because we're launching a few of our own little products here. Nothing crazy, just kind of some little niches that we see in the marketplace. We might end up getting in the distillate game.
I know. It's like, Costco selling Kirkland. I don't mind it. I'm going to still put in the Grey Goose somehow.
I think, at the end of the day, we sell 200.
I support you.
Yeah. But same thing. If I'm going to sell it, I always smoke it. Even though I'm not a big dabber, we got some dabs coming down the pipe, hash dabs. I'm going to dab the fuck out of it. I've already tested it just because whatever. Like I feel like
that's what you do it. You dab at home?
Oh no, I was mostly flower. I've been actually smoking these hash vapes we made that I really like.
And
I smoked the M juice.
Anna's your wife?
Yeah, same thing basically. Yeah, she smokes more than me. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, in fact, that's like one of my few tricks of marriage.
There's always one in the house, like one. So.
Well, look, I'll smoke pretty substantial every night, but I just just during the day I'm just like I like to be a little more attenuted. To each their own.
Does the raspiness like creep up with the dab?
Oh, by then I'm like
down?
half knocked out or whatever. No, I'm not. Like I said, I'm not a dabber really. But when we had to pull out the rig, we're going to launch hash. I will dab it. Maybe in my life I got like 12 under my dabs.
No, you dabbed with me. Remember?
Yeah,
I was so nervous because I was like, oh man, I served you up in like most proper low temp, like mostly just aromas coming at you. And then you talked for 45 minutes.
Yeah, I did.
I
didn't shut the fuck up.
It was awesome.
That dab is like speed to me a little bit, right?
It was, huh?
I like. Yeah, and I'm already up there. So
that's how I am.
Yeah, so it's a interesting thing. But any product we put out, we want to get on. But the COA, the point I'm getting at, the COA, you can't even put the extended panel on it. They won't allow you. So
it's coming. Yeah. Like it'll go there.
I think it will go there.
But it's not going to have pass fail. It's just going to say here's
first.
Here's what's there.
I want to clean up the supply as quick as possible, which I'm loving the progress.
Oh shit. Yeah. But I was trying to make a point earlier.
Yeah.
Let me
get it.
The bud tender, whatever your brand is, the brands know. And so you just ask them, do you have the expanded and what does it look like? Because they can fucking show you quick. Like they all know.
Well, the goal for me is
so blue dot, no blue dot. Just
right.
fucking DM the thing. Like you can reach me in a DM,
exactly.
The brand,
yeah,
and everybody.
At the end of the day, my goal is that at some point we'll have a system, and this is further down the line, that you'll be able to get everybody's COA on a batch. I've actually talked to a guy about automating that. I'm like, first things first. The COA is only as good as the
talk to our IT guy. He's
right.
got scan our product.
No,
it goes right there.
I think that's
simple. We got the pathways.
Exactly. That's like phase
Every
3.
brand can do it.
For now, stickers is good. Clean it up. But I do think the consumer should know.
Oh, you mean like requiring that it's accessible?
Yeah. So trying to make it accessible so when they buy it and they get a little barcode and then, boom, it's out the door. Somehow get it into the text so that if they want to look it up, they can, because sometimes you get non-detect and, sometimes you get little amounts that are still passable and just whatever. It's something extra to give to the consumer. For now, we got to figure out, okay, well, what do we know is not passing, which should be on the COA. Let's address the consumer, health and safety issues. And let's, I think at this point, the in quotes cheating, if it was happening, is way less. I don't think we're going to find, if we tested everything off our shelf today, it's going to be an infinitesimal amount that doesn't pass the DCC, if nothing else, just for brand.
The DCC is looking clean. Like, it's clean.
It's
like
clean,
the vapes on California shelves are
they're DCC good.
What is our market called? The legal market?
Legal,
what the fuck is this?
legal. Yeah, I guess legal.
The good side of the market,
good side,
that old school.
Yeah,
the black market stores.
Yeah, real bad.
Which I love, but if you test that, it's like fucked dirty. So we've gotten it. It looks like we've pulled it from your shelves and the other retailer shelves pretty clean.
Right.
There's a smattering of these like bad applicators. That's going to go away pretty quick here. But how the fuck do we address the black market stores and the dirtiness there? The black market stores can stay open as far as I'm concerned. I don't want to like trapping, like let the trap happen. Right. But let the trap be clean.
Well, I think what's happening is stuff that's testing dirty is getting shoved in there. And then the other thing is with all the liters I know are being made, only a few are going, like, you do the math. You actually don't need that many liters.
Our product ends up in the black market.
I mean, anybody who's on scale, it's just what's happening. I do think that, as we get it cleaner and cleaner, it kind of gives us a little bit of a weapon against the black market. I think it's always going to exist unless they reform the tax policy, but it really is a health and safety issue that they're allowing it to flourish, right? And then, we've tested the black market a lot, and that was like 75, 80%. Some of the worst shit, Cat 1.
It's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's bad. And then, we're testing hemp now, and like, I mean,
we have a booger coming out.
Yeah, that's good. Though. Pick it on camera. And then, we're looking at the mold in there and different stuff. I mean, you could see it just from when you buy it. So
I've never seen that.
Yeah. Oh, there was
you bought stuff in the.
We've got a whole bunch of hemp stuff going out.
How many stores are there that are in LA?
It's like LA doesn't even care. So like in some of the smaller jurisdictions, you can make some progress, or like even here in Long Beach, they won't let a trap open. Of course, people got the plug and the delivery and everything else. And then, the big thing now is the hemp that is, just kind of coming in.
It's cannabis, but
it's weed. Yeah. Let's just be honest about what it is, right?
It's awesome. I think it's fucking awesome. Well, but just have it be clean is all. And it's not that clean if you look at it.
My take on it is, and look, maybe this is a self-centered view, but in a state that has cannabis and access, let's try to make that work, right? Because it's safe, it's regulated. People have staked a lot on it. In states, like there's 11 or 12 that are not. I mean, I just think it's a states' rights issue. Like I think most things should actually be that don't have cannabis that are allowing hemp. That's great. The flip side of that is, you could buy sticks in gas stations. Like people have no fucking idea. And just like me, when I was smoking in the 90s on up, like, and then,
No, I just ordered Hidden. I'm in the club of Hidden Hills. Do you know what Hidden Hills is? I'm going to plug that brand right now. Yeah, you can get 3-gram jars of live resin. I'm pretty sure most of it came from cannabis. It's fucking awesome. I ordered it with my license on my computer straight to my door.
Yeah.
And it's like made in California. Yeah. Fucking hats off to that team. Like,
well, it's getting burned going out of state and coming back in.
Well, it's also in all the smoke shops. Right. So,
yeah, I do think we'll see
awesome.
Without the bill, the AB 223 that went down. I think they're gonna, if nothing else, just because they like the tax money, I think they're gonna crack on it. And my thing is like, look, if you even the playing field, fine. But like when you're getting taxed into oblivion and regulated into oblivion, and then there's no protocols, no nothing happening in this other shadow market, it's like, yo, even it up. And look, I've heard the argument, it's probably true. Well, you're a sucker for ever getting in bed with the government. And I'm like, I sure fucking am. But I'm here.
It's still funner than raisins.
Yeah,
it's still funner than raisins.
No, it's fine. But I'm here now, and we got to protect what's ours. But I do think it's a good path in these red states. It's an interesting loophole. It's super fascinating. And it's not, I don't know, red states is the right word, but there's 11 states that don't have cannabis programs that basically hemp is the way in. And I think it's a super useful, tool to that.
Access to medicine is fine.
Yeah. My thing would be, and maybe we'll make a new hat, like make hemp clean again if we go for it, because right now hemp is not clean, right? It's just generally, it's same thing with East Coast weed and everything else. The worst of what doesn't pass in California is, not exclusively. There's clean weed that ends up on the black market.
Yeah. So here's the thing, though. I think for me and you, which would be nice for like episode or just looking at it together, is that if you look at, and so when it comes to hemp, if it came from cannabis and it came from THCA converted to THC, it's awesome. Fucking get after it. Hidden Hills, whoever can do it, I love it. Call it hemp. It's the conversion process of taking CBD and flipping it into your other analytes, which are like THCP or Delta 11 or 10 or 8 or whatever it is. There's some question marks around that for sure. But here's the problem with the conversion is that if you test your shelf right now and other people's shelves, it's getting mixed into the vapes great again. So I think the pesticide thing, that shit's like the farmers are on notice and like it's going to be like staunchly clean in the next 12 months. But the conversion, like we shouldn't be competing with the conversion, it feels like. Because it is getting mixed in. So I'd love to look at data with you next on
No, I know they're out
where
there.
is their conversion? And then like let's just make the brands and the producers aware who's fucking slipping in the conversion. Because like you shouldn't be vaping your vapes off your shelf that have conversion in them, but you are. We tested like 50 SKUs and I think we have a lot more coming. And at that point, which was like 3 months ago, 18% or about you'd have to ask Josh, about 18% of the vapes from a California store had some conversion in it.
Right. And
that's not.
Yeah, I think the pesticides is first, the THC is another one, the conversion's another one. I mean, this is going to be a long battle. Tackling I think the red alert and why I'm trying to move on it as fast as we can is the pesticides. I kind of like Josh's take on the as a gateway drug. The THC inflation is like the gateway drug
to just like cheating the whole fucking thing.
Well, because once you start cheating, then they kind of got a hold over you. Then you did them one solid, then you got to do more. And look, I actually wish they would get rid of it altogether. But and it's cool. We're selling Alien Labs dropped a new 23%.
Oh, that's another brand. Clean as clean.
Yeah,
can
they're
be.
From
What I've seen, like they got good. They
handle. They
good
really,
process.
really good SOPs. Yeah, shout out to them.
I don't know them, but.
Yeah. We know them well,
I'll smoke that weed.
We sell a fuck ton of their weed. They're,
I'm talking about their oil too, whatever they're getting that from. I mean, like, they got a good supply chain.
It's all coming from their.
Like,
they're single. They're not sourcing, so they're single sourcing everything, right? And we've our history is we grew up from them, so we've always sold a lot of Connected. To this day, if you add Connected and Alien Labs, I'm pretty sure they're our number one selling flower on the shelf, and they do have great SOPs. We just tried a thing and it's working, and I'm glad it's working, where they have a THC limit of 25 just because of the consumer, or like minimum, really is not a limit. It would be a baseline of what they'll release because the consumers want at least 25.
Yeah,
so,
there's that standard like Sun-Made set and a bin of raisins, like it's standards coming up.
So we got a 20.
Like, because the legal markets gets a bad rap for mids, and like
But I actually think that's going away. We got they dropped a 23% to try it on our shelf.
Okay.
And it's moving. So and then I noticed.
Oh, that's like a real test though. Like
that is,
a good sticky weed, like proper indoor, like 23, 24. What the fuck, 30? No.
It doesn't matter. The THC is a whole fake fucking rabbit hole anyway. So.
But it's shifting. Like,
it's shifting.
The consumer knows, like whatever with that number, like it's shifting.
I do think that shifted a lot. There's still, it's not all. And then, and I like Alien Labs doing that, and, kind of the inspiration of some of the products. Like this was before we were launching them, before the story hit, but just kind of gaming people up on, rosin and cured resin and what the differences are and such. But at the end of the day, same thing. You have a 23% strain you could sell. That's actually a better weapon to fight the THC war than like as a customer experience than like trying to tell them while they're up there. Here, smoke this, right? And then come back, trust me, it's going to be good. And then, you've converted, one guy on that sale, and then those are happening.
But like 710 Labs is doing an awesome job about just being combative about it. And like Frank, they do some of the best stuff when it comes to like, fuck your fucking THC.
Yeah.
No,
it's
turning. Like I had a friend, I think they sold Nug products. I can't remember, but they came from alcohol and they were like passionate. I'm trying to remember the name. Passionate about brewing, microbrews, because they did 10 years in that. And it was interesting. They pointed out to me, talking about the correlation between cannabis and this potency thing, and then like really potent IPAs, right? Like he told me they were all the rave in the beginning. Everybody came in like, what's my alcoholic beverage count? And now you have this other count, which is more important today to those drinkers. They don't come in looking for what's fucking potent. They're like, what's hoppy or whatever. Like what's the notes?
Right.
And like that took a decade, is what this gentleman told me, in microbrews, for people to come in, not ask for, give me the fucking 12%, give me the Sawbuzz, give me the Sawbuzz, and then like fucking pass out after one drink.
Right.
Now everybody's like, "Ooh, I don't care. Like, I don't want a lot of alcohol.
Right.
I want those flavors."
Right. No, I do think that we've come a long way. And again, there's always work to do, but each thing that we could introduce in the market, and then, I think as the testing gets, more accurate, they know. The other thing too is, even though the DCC is, huge fail on the recalls and stuff, there was just another one yesterday again two, same brand. We won't put them on there, but it's from October of 23. And it's like, bro, we actually happened not to sell it, but there was one in September. We sold through 20 stores. And it's like, well, like, we don't hold shit for, like, if it's more than 60, 75 days, it's going to beat the shit out of us, the inventory. So we got to get it the fuck out. Right. So like, what good is it to be testing from fall of 23? But I do think they've upped their game. They're watching it. If nothing else, they've been embarrassed.
When were the dates on those recalls?
October 23.
Damn, smoked it.
Just out of curiosity, I saw if it was in our store at some point. Like, I already know we don't have anything in there from, like, it wouldn't matter. Name anything. I don't have October of 23.
It's got to be a pain for the store when that happens. Is it not a pain for the
Not
store?
really.
Or
I mean,
if they actually had it, but they're so far behind.
There was
like,
one.
We're going to be smoking.
Well, they got one aspergillus. I won't say the brand. I called the guy. Felt really bad about it. And I believed him to be sincere. And we pulled that. It's not that hard of a thing to pull, right? And I would like them to see more of that. But my kind of thing with that was, they came in, they actually tested from our store, which I thought it was related because I was like kind of talking some shit about him at the time. And I'm like, there is a correlation between me talking shit and the DCC showing up. And I was like, oh fuck, here they come.
Dude,
but they were
going to cut this all for that. Like, I can't be showing up against the government.
We love
they
you
show
guys.
up. They show up all the time. They show up all
We
the
love you
time.
guys.
I'm just kidding.
No, we're getting friendly now. But they came in and out in 10 minutes. So I was like, okay, it was just coincidental. So they grabbed this pre-roll, and I wish they would have told us why then, because then I'm starting to think, what's going on? Is it THC inflation, or is it something really bad? Because I would have just, pulled it then, but is it random?
I think they're scared to be wrong too, and like, you're fucking up brands if you're wrong.
Right,
so
but
like,
I would at least like to know,
or it's not good,
or it's on a temp hold because of this, which is fine. Just say it's a temp hold because of this, and then
so they'd actually freeze that product then and say hold.
Well, because then what ended up happening is. And it was aspergillus, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But at the end of the day, like, we didn't know why the fuck they were there. And then, it's like, do I want to hold it? I don't know why they're there. Is it random? Like, what the fuck's going on? Had we known, like, hey, it could
was it like field police? Like, police? Did they have?
I wasn't
like when I worked at the car dealership. What blew my mind is if you were doing bad things with cash and not behaving according to the laws, the DMV came in, locked your doors, and when they came, they had fucking guns. So does the DCC have guns yet?
I don't think they do. I wasn't there. I know for sure the CDTFA does. Like, if you get a little bit late, they come in with the guns. Like, I could tell you firsthand. That's what happens. In fact, I was getting into it with them yesterday on a Zoom thing because they were trying to change the tax code unilaterally, and they were like, "Don't yell." And I was like, said some shit like, "Oh, wait a minute, I can't exercise my First Amendment right, but you motherfuckers could roll in with, weapons and just tap a till for
it's painful,
a misunderstanding or we haven't had that in a while." But as to the future and the messaging and the education, I think these are going to be critical components as to educating the consumers, the messaging, so people do differentiate on the shelf when they're making these super important life decisions, right? It doesn't feel like one, but 20 years later, it could be a life decision. And then, what's the future of what you guys are trying to do and just staying on the cutting edge of having the single source best farming techniques for a large
best farmers. There's better farmers than us.
Let's just say this: the most of somebody on scale that also is selling, their own concentrates and vapes. Definitely the most conscious. We'll go with that.
We got conscious farmers and operators for sure.
What's the future of that? And then, how do we keep carrying this message forward so the consumer knows? Because, look, I'm pretty deep in it. Again, wasn't on the lab side, but if I was, ignorant myself, 7-8 weeks ago, pretty goddamn ignorant, honestly, like pretty fucking ignorant. Like we've done the best we could to caught up. So how can we expect the customers, to become a little bit more enlightened, get that message out there, and what's the future looking like for you guys and what you're trying to do?
Casey Berthasell, Adam Silver, Lyle Martin, Kevin Kroger. Those are team members that have been with us for quite some time and that uphold our standards. And we're just going to keep like farming year after year with the threats that surround us in conventional farming and just creating the cleanest product we can. we're really happy to see standards, begin to come up. And I think like the bright part of the future is retailers like Catalyst who are willing to like ask questions and to look a little bit deeper, even though we may not be like totally into the unknowns, but being able to like stare truth in the face and go, fuck, I don't really like the answers I'm getting, but what should we change? And so Blue Dot, you being willing to do Blue Dot is huge. That shifts it all, and it just puts a spotlight on it. I don't know any other retailers with leadership that's willing to really look. I mean, I know other leadership that's willing to look at it, but it's willing to say something. And Blue Dot, none. So I think the future for California legal cannabis is phenomenal. I think that it's already probably a lot cleaner than it has been in the past. And so I think that, and the important part of that is though, as a California brand, California needs to lead. Like your shelves need to be the shit compared to the rest of the fucking country. And from what we've seen, they haven't been like quite to the shit level that we want them at. In order to be a leader as California, because we're not in other states. We kind of bit off more than we could chew at Raw Garden and have to we're like, oh fuck, we're overbuilt in California. How do we stay in business? This is fucking hard. We're used to not making money as farmers, and it's still funner than raisins. I'll say that over and over again. But as a brand that's stuck in Cali, if California, when the opportunity to ship across state lines happens, if California is still not a leader and not looked up to like it has been, like I'm fucked. And it doesn't matter where the shit was grown.
I think I'm confident it will be. I think those that survive are going to have a market edge. I think by birthright, even though we live in a state that has some weird idiosyncrasies as to the cannabis regs and to business, and that's putting a euphemism on it, we will by birthright, I think, have a major advantage, if we want to travel, east, as those markets develop. And I think there's time to get there because, from what I've seen in those markets, and it's not a put down of anybody, there's always isolated, good growers, cultivators, retailers, whatever, but they just seem like they're behind. And I'm just going to say it, we got the best product in the world, I think, here in California.
And with black guys, like the LA Times thing, like, fuck, maybe not. So,
right. And we got to be
hats
perfect.
off to you for like speaking up. So thank you again. I know I've been like saying that, but the whole team is just like, what the fuck would we be doing if nobody's talking about it?
Well, and look, all I've done really is just piggyback on work that like you've done and Josh has done and some of these other people that have been, leaders in it, but, becoming aware of it and just trying to put a little, push on it. I'm really just serving work
that's
dangerous.
What you've done.
Yeah, it's definitely a little dangerous.
The Blue Dot's dangerous.
Yeah.
Thank God it's not like a red dot.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's what the behavior in this industry is fucked up. Bro culture is thick.
There's been a few of those, not recently, but I definitely think that I think the future of clean, fully clean, no chemicals of all cannabis is fantastic. It's going to be, maybe we're not all the way there yet. We're getting there, and I think we'll be safer than food or anything that we ingest. And I think as an industry, we'll self-police ourselves, at least in the short term. Hopefully we don't get taken over by, all these big corporate interests better than food or, tobacco or some of these other industries actually did, because I do think the roots of the cannabis.
Hey, if tobacco needs to take over because people are shifting their brakes to puffing on weed, like fucking great. Like that would be so great, right? Like no. The standard's going to be set. So right, even if tobacco gets involved, all it means is that people are shifting away from that drug, which is nicotine,
right.
And to a much
I see what you're
from
saying.
What we think. Yeah. So I don't fear it, because it's a shift from the consumer's choice of drug, and this is a fucking phenomenal drug.
That's why I'm watching alcohol knock a little bit, and I think they realize, and I think tobacco. Everybody says this big pharma thing. I think they'll develop some drugs, but they'll be very specific kind of things that are niche-y for different issues. Is like they can research them and let them out. I see tobacco and alcohol losing market share to cannabis.
Yeah.
They're going to have to jump in. It's going to be a double-edged sword. Look, economics is economics. It's how it goes. But they do have the lobbying power to actually make the change that, we're trying. We're forming up a posse on that too to, effectuate change. But, when they come in, they might actually, they have full-time guys up there in Sacramento that are just, punking state senators and stuff, 24/7. I want to get your thoughts on one more thing. And, there's a lot of different opinions on this. Organic. What do you think about organic, and is Raw Garden organic?
So I think it's a bummer that we can't use the word because the federal government, I guess, has control on that word. And so that's like for your compliance department. So Clean Green certification, the whole full Clean Green certification means that whatever is grown and labeled as such is organic. So as many people have heard, and this is kind of nuanced, Santa Barbara County, the whole state of California, has metals in its native soil. And the cannabis plant is a great bioaccumulator, so it just like sucks them up. And so essentially all of our soil grown products for oil are made under our clean green farming, which means, yes, they're organic. Then if you move to, and so what happens is in our process to make oils, we can avoid any of the heavy metals that it bioaccumulates during the grow cycle. So if we want to grow, though, flour, where we're not able to avoid by washing or like solvents or filtering, right? If you want to avoid those heavy metals in a dried flour, it's very raw product. You can't clean it up of heavy metals, right? That's the neat thing about this crop is like veggies all get washed. Not strawberries, but a lot of veggies, they get washed. Then what happens? They even get processed further and cleaned up. A lot of the pesticides are water soluble, but we don't wash our flowers. We don't smoke our veggies. We concentrate our flowers. So when the flower's dried, like you're stuck. When it's harvested, you're stuck. If you're making oils, you can avoid some of this and get it unstuck, like heavy metals. So when we wanted to make joints, we knew soil grabs these heavy metals. Oil products can get away from them. But the dried flower, if you just take that, it has some heavy metals in it. So we have to do what? Get out of the soil. So that above ground grow for our ground dried flower is done in a best practices, which means everything's the same, except we don't use organic nutrients. We use salt-based nutrients, which is like what I'm assuming Alien Labs, Connected, all of these great indoor brands use. So based on the fact we use salts, anything we do that's above ground now, which is about, and I may be corrected on this, but like 30% of our production that's done above ground uses salt. So it doesn't qualify for organic, but it's like going to Whole Foods and what they used to do with cattle. Like, this is the only grass-fed, never then tricked you because it got like some, a little bit of beefing up in the end kind of thing. Like, this is tier 3, tier 4. So essentially best practices, but we use salt-based nutes. So that should answer your question.
No, it's a definitely an interesting debate. The chemical free, I think, is the first thing. I think there's a spirited debate on.
That's residue,
right?
So,
yeah.
So this is just how we feed the plants.
Got it. What organic specifically means. And look, let's we could go on and on. I think this was super productive. And again, I would really urge and I'm going to put this up on my page. Any bud tender that's selling product anywhere, but especially at Catalyst. I mean, I like to see it everywhere. Watch these so you can learn about what you're selling. It's super important, right? I think at the end of the day, educating our consumers in that, 2 or 3, 4, 5 minute interaction.
Can I interrupt you though?
Yeah.
Send us a DM. We answer our DMs, and the interesting thing about the LA Times article, and I can tell you this, and the reason I'm looking at the camera is because since then, I bet, because our consumer that goes into the shop and is like, well, I just got the Raw Garden thing, they understand our story and our emphatic nature about getting a clean, good medicine. Okay? They have been very interested. And we have probably, as a brand, received more heat since the LA Times article in our DMs, but we answer them. I write most of the answers. So if you've got questions, the DM is where the fucking truth happens.
Be careful.
And if they don't respond to your DM, they're not making vapes great again.
Right.
I can fucking tell you.
No,
that.
look, I respond to them all. It's getting
so if
harder.
You got more, so I'm just saying,
yeah.
If the bud tender out of this, if you watched, I fucking hope so. Send us the questions in the DM. we will answer. I'll answer.
No, that's great. I love the fact that you guys do that. It's super important. I try to get to them all. In fact, I do get to them all. It's getting harder. There might be a day that we can't, but I think anytime a customer or somebody who's an interested party reaches out, I mean, it really is an opportunity to engage, and that doesn't happen a lot, right? Whatever it is, we're seeing 12 to 14, 15,000 people a day. So for a few of those to take the time out of their day, a few might not be 80, 100 a day now, right? But I usually get high at night and clip them all down and do it. So DM Raw Garden.
Please,
Thomas wants to answer them all. Load his DMs up. He's down for it. Be careful what you
Be really appreciate it.
Be careful what you wish for. Look, we're gonna wrap it.
Yeah.
I want to say this, right? That's super important. Single source cartridges on scale. Raw Garden is the only brand, right? Super passionate about the farming techniques, and bringing Josh as well as Thomas forward, who've really been on this issue and are pioneers. As far as there's plenty of other guys out there, so I'm not throwing shade on anybody. They're really pioneers on just being at the forefront of this movement. I think it's critical. I also think it's critical that customers, as well as bud tenders, start to differentiate between these issues. And look, we're gonna hopefully by October 1st, we just ordered 250,000 of them. I'm sure there'll be a lot more. I'm sure there'll be a few glitches too, but this is super urgent. We're gonna roll out these Cat 4 stickers.
250,000 Blue Dot Babes.
Yeah, so far. That's
so,
nothing. We
I'm
sell
so
200.
Curious
yeah.
how many we can get.
We sell 200,000 or
Get
so.
rid of your
So,
stickers,
yeah,
man.
yeah, we're gonna get rid of them. So I'm very
job.
confident Raw Garden going to be first in line to get one. So they'll if it's October 1st or October 4th, bang, they're going to be on it. So we're going to have to figure out.
There's a bunch of brands that already are Cat 4. They're they should just be loading up on the blue stickers. There's a lot of good shit. It's all
100%.
good.
Eventually, we're going to have a little system set up so you guys can just get them and tag them. And look, this what we're trying to do, I think, is the most important thing we can do. And again, with intentionality, we're the patience over profits t-shirt. The most important thing we can do ever in any business is keep your eye on the patients, keep your eye on the customers. And if you do that, I think the rest of everything, falls into place. And, as I've become educated on this, I want to thank Thomas for being a good resource, but also being a conscious farmer in spite of maybe it being such a loud echo, right? Whereas others might get there, and it's not a put down on others, maybe they weren't gamed up either, because that's where the market is moving. So he's been a leader in that regard. And look, again, it's just a real simple message. We're trying to make vapes great again. We're trying to keep our shelf and our consumers as safe as they can be. And we sign off how we always sign off: weed for the people.
Thank you.